I never thought I'd end up here, honestly. Lisa and I had been together for about 5 years. We met in college, hit it off pretty well, and I always thought we were solid. She was fiery, ambitious, and honestly a little bitchy sometimes. Pushed people around a bit, but I loved her anyway. We got married 2 years ago, and I always thought we had a good thing going. Sure, she could be difficult, but I figured that was just her personality. I was ready to settle down, build a future, maybe even have kids someday. At first, everything seemed normal, but over the last few months, I started noticing little things. She was more distant, secretive. She'd hide her phone when I came near, get defensive if I asked about certain texts or calls. I'd catch her in little lies, small stuff, like claiming she was working late when I knew she was out with her friends, or saying she'd be home early but showing up hours later. I brushed it off, telling myself I was paranoid or maybe she just had a lot on her plate. But deep down, I was worried. Something was off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Then last month, we went out to dinner for our anniversary. I'd planned everything. Reserve a nice table at that fancy restaurant we liked, booked a hotel nearby for the night. I wanted it to be special, even though I'd been feeling distant from her lately. She seemed excited at first, but as the night went on, she was snappier than usual. She kept checking her phone, even during the toast I made, where I poured my heart out about how much she meant to me. I told her I loved her, that I wanted to spend forever with her, and she just smiled and said, "Yeah, I love you too, just don't screw up." That's when I saw it. During that toast, I glanced at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I saw a message from some guy, an odd nickname, something like Babe or Cutie, and it was sent just an hour before our dinner started. The message was flirty, full of emojis. My stomach dropped. I felt like someone punched me in the gut. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. How long has this been going on? Was I just blind, or had I been ignoring all the signs? I couldn't hold back anymore. I asked her about it right there in front of everyone. I told her I saw her phone, that I knew she was cheating. She froze for a second, then rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, come on, it's not a big deal, just some stupid flirt. It doesn't mean anything." She brushed me off like I was crazy, like I was overreacting. That moment shattered something inside me. I felt numb, like I was seeing everything in slow motion. I couldn't believe she'd been lying to me all this time, sneaking around behind my back during what was supposed to be our special night. I was furious. No, more than furious, I was devastated. My mind kept circling, trying to process it all. I wanted to scream, break something, cry, anything to release the pain that was building inside. But I just sat there, staring at her, feeling like I didn't even recognize the woman I'd married. And that was just the beginning. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The image of her texting that guy kept replaying in my head like punch to the gut. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let myself be so blind. I had always thought Lisa was the strong, somewhat bitchy woman who could handle anything, but now I saw her for what she really was, a liar and a cheater. I wanted to confront her again, but I also knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just blow up and yell at her without thinking it through. The next morning, I decided to do some digging. I started by going through her phone when she was in the shower. It was messy, but I needed to see if there was more to this than just a one-night thing. Sure enough, I found dozens of texts, flirty, suggestive messages, some even explicit. She'd been sneaking around for months, maybe longer. She'd been lying about where she was or who she was with. And that bastard friend of ours, Jake, my best friend, he was right in the middle of it all. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I trusted, was cheating on me with my best friend. I confronted her that same day. I told her I had proof, that I knew everything. She looked annoyed, like I was bothering her, and she snapped, "You're overreacting as usual. You don't know what you're talking about." Her tone was bitchy, dismissive. I pressed her harder, showing her the messages, the photos I'd found. Her face twisted into a sneer. "Wow, you're really psycho, aren't you? Just because I talked to some guy doesn't mean I'm cheating. Maybe you're just paranoid." I felt my blood boiling. I'd never seen her act like this, so defiant, so cold. I was angry, yes, but mostly heartbroken. How could she lie like this? How could she make me feel like I was crazy just for wanting honesty? I told her I was done, that I couldn't do this anymore. But she just shrugged, said I was being dramatic, and threw out some excuse about how she needed space and freedom. Basically, she was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt myself. That's when I knew I had to do something drastic. I started planning my next move. I didn't want to just leave her. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused me. I decided to gather evidence, not just for my own peace of mind, but to make sure she couldn't deny it later. I hired a private investigator to track her and Jake. I knew it was overkill, but I needed to be sure. Meanwhile, I kept my distance, trying to stay calm, pretending everything was fine while I was internally burning up with betrayal. I didn't want her to see how much she'd hurt me, but inside I was raging. Every time I thought about her lying, sneaking around, and my best friend betraying me, I felt like I was dying inside. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. I kept up appearances, pretending I was fine, but inside I was spiraling. I couldn't focus at work, I couldn't sleep, and every time I saw her, I felt this mixture of disgust and heartbreak. I didn't want to believe she'd do this to me, but the evidence was piling up. The private investigator finally came through with his report. She'd been cheating on me with Jake for at least 6 months. It wasn't just a one-night stand. It was a full-blown affair, and the worst part was how casual she was about it, like she didn't care how much she'd hurt me. I remember the moment I got the call from the pie. I was sitting on the couch staring at the floor when my phone buzzed. I answered and heard his calm voice telling me everything. My stomach sank. I felt like I'd been punched again, only this time from the inside out. She'd been sneaking out at night, meeting him at hotels, and even taking trips with him. All the while, I was planning our anniversary dinner, pouring my heart out to her. I thought I knew her, but I was dead wrong. That night, I decided I couldn't hold it in anymore. I needed to confront her face to face to see her reaction. I waited until she was home alone, and I called her into the living room. She looked annoyed, like I was bothering her again, but I didn't care. I laid all the evidence out on the table, the messages, the photos, the report. I told her I knew everything, that she was a liar and a cheat. Her reaction. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk and said, "Oh, so now you're playing detective. Seriously, you're overreacting as usual, it's just sex, and honestly, I don't owe you anything anymore." Her words cut deep. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I asked her why she did it, why she threw everything away. She shrugged, rolled her eyes, and said, "I got bored. You're always working, and honestly, you're kind of dull. Jake's better than you in bed, that's all there is to it. And don't act like I owe you some kind of explanation. I'm done pretending to be perfect." Her attitude was so cold, so dismissive. It was like she was trying to rub it in, like she wanted me to know she didn't care anymore. I was crushed. My mind was racing. How could she be so callous, so indifferent to the pain she caused? I felt my eyes water, but I refused to cry in front of her. Instead, I told her I was done, that I wanted her gone. She scoffed and said, "Whatever. You're not worth my time anyway." That's when I knew I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. The betrayal was too deep, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of anger, sadness, and pure disappointment. I didn't know what was worse, her lying or how easily she dismissed everything I'd ever meant to her. The fallout was immediate and brutal. I threw her out that night, watching her pack her bags with that bitchy smirk still plastered on her face. I didn't say much, I was too numb. Inside, I was a storm of emotions, anger, hurt, betrayal, each one fighting for dominance. I knew I had to get out of that house as soon as possible. I couldn't stand being near her, knowing what she'd done. I stayed at my brother's place for a few days, trying to breathe, trying to process what had just happened. During that time, I kept thinking about everything. The lies, the sneaking around, the years I wasted believing in what we had. I felt like I'd been living in some kind of nightmare. Every memory of our good times now felt tainted, like I'd been played for a fool. I kept replaying that night of the anniversary dinner over and over, wishing I'd seen it coming, wishing I'd been stronger or more perceptive. But the truth was, I was blindsided, completely blindsided. A huge part of me wanted to lash out too, confront Jake, to scream at her for being such a bitch. But I knew that wouldn't fix anything. I needed to think about what was next, how to rebuild myself, how to move forward after this. I started looking into lawyers, figuring out what my options were for divorce. The idea of losing her, losing everything I thought we had, hurt worse than I expected. But at the same time, I felt this strange sense of relief, like I was finally waking up from a nightmare. I realized I had been so caught up in her lies, I'd forgotten what I wanted for myself. I also started seeing friends more often, just trying to keep my mind busy. The worst part was the sense of betrayal from someone I'd trusted implicitly, my best friend Jake. I had always considered him more than a friend. He was like a brother to me. And to find out he had been sneaking into my wife's bed, knowing how I felt about her, felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe he'd do that to me, to us. I couldn't even look at him the same way anymore. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever be able to forgive him or even myself. The emotional roller coaster kept going. One day I was furious, yelling at myself for being so blind. The next I was just empty, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the good times and how I'd never get them back. I kept telling myself I deserved better, that I was worth more than someone who would cheat and lie and then act like I was overreacting. I knew I had to start rebuilding, little by little, to find some sense of normalcy again. But honestly, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to jump into the unknown, not knowing what was going to happen next or if I'd ever get my life back. The decision to divorce was almost automatic at that point. I couldn't stay with someone who saw me as nothing more than a doormat, someone who could so casually cheat and lie without a second thought. It took me a while to find a good lawyer, but once I did, everything moved quickly. The paperwork was filed, and I made it clear I wanted everything divided fairly, especially because of the betrayal. I didn't want her to get away with lying and sneaking around while I was left holding the pieces of my shattered life. The whole process was a brutal reminder of how much trust I'd lost. Every document, every court date felt like a small victory, like I was reclaiming some part of myself that she tried to destroy. But it wasn't just about the legal side. I had to rebuild emotionally. I started going to therapy, trying to make sense of what had happened. Honestly, I had a lot of anger, at her, at Jake, at myself even. How could I have been so blind? One of the hardest parts was facing my friends. I told a few close ones what had happened, and the reactions were mixed. Some were sympathetic, some judged me for not seeing it sooner, but most just told me I deserved better. I kept my head down, not wanting to admit how much I was hurting. I felt embarrassed, like I'd failed somehow. But deep down, I knew it wasn't my fault. She was the one who lied, who betrayed everything we built together. Eventually, I moved out of the house. It was strange sleeping alone after all those years. The silence was deafening at first. I missed the noise, the chaos of our life together. Despite everything, it was still my life. I started going out more, reconnecting with friends, hitting the gym. I knew I had to keep busy, had to remind myself that I was still a person, not just someone betrayed. I also started dating again, cautiously. It's too soon for anything serious, but I realized I still wanted to find happiness, even after everything. Looking back, I realize I've learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and I'll never take it for granted again. I've learned that people can be two-faced, that sometimes you don't really know someone until it's too late. But I've also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived this, and I will keep surviving. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her or Jake destroy me completely. I've got my dignity, my self-respect, and I intend to rebuild my life on my own terms now. Now, looking back, I realize that the biggest lesson I've taken from all this is about self-worth. I trusted her with everything, and in the end, she proved that trust was misplaced. But I also learned that no matter how deep the betrayal, I can survive it. I won't say it's easy. Some days are still hard and the wounds are fresh, but I've come a long way. I've started to see my own value again, outside of her lies and Jake's betrayal. I've also become more cautious about who I let into my life. Trust isn't something you give blindly anymore. It's something you earn. It's a painful lesson, but one I needed. I realize now that I deserved honesty, loyalty, and respect, things she and Jake took for granted. Knowing that, I refuse to settle for anything less in the future. I want someone who values me, who would never cheat or betray me. Most importantly, I've learned that the pain of betrayal can be turned into strength. I will never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I am rebuilding my life piece by piece. I'm focusing on myself, my happiness, my peace of mind, my future. And I want anyone reading this to understand that even when everything seems lost, there's always a way out. You just have to be brave enough to take it. So, for anyone going through something similar, trust your instincts, don't ignore the signs, and know your worth. You don't have to stay in a situation where you're not valued, no matter how much you once loved someone. Keep fighting, keep rebuilding. Because in the end, the only person who truly has to live with your choices is you. And you deserve to be happy, no matter how dark the betrayal feels in the moment.